carrying.
That sucks.
Okay, we'd like to get started.
Good.
Still don't feel good.
Okay, we'll call this meeting to order and start with the pledge by Councilman Groves.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
State the time. Nick, can you call the roll, please?
Councilman Blaisdell. Is he on?
He's here. Frank, can you wave or say hi or?
Councilwoman Kerr.
Present.
Councilman Froelich.
Present.
Councilman Isakson.
Present.
Supervisor Zalotnik.
Present. Our first item was supposed to be Ray on giving us a little presentation on the ambulance corps, but Ray hasn't got here yet, so we'll flip-flop and a little discussion here with MJ about the town hall project.
Is Ray coming here, or is he doing it on Zoom?
Well,
Did you look to see if he was there?
oh, here he is, yeah, okay. Sorry about that. Here we go. Got the wrong person. I know Ray's here someplace. Hang on just a second. This is not as easy as it looks. Ray, if you can unmute yourself. Ray, can you unmute yourself? Or do you have to turn yours
I
down?
know. I'm trying to do it. Might have to get off.
Can't just all the way in right now.
If you hover over your box, you should see the option menu.
Huh?
The picture of you, hover over that, should be an option menu.
There you go.
Find yourself on those.
Okay, Ray.
I'm muted.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Ray.
Alright, yeah, we've been talking for a while, that we would like to get our agency, our new station, up in town center. And, what we're looking for is a couple of acres of land. We want to basically double the size of our building. We have just totally run out of room. On Friday, we're going to be running a clinic for COVID-19 shots, and we will be having people staged in our Bay Area because we don't have room to really have any other place for it in the current station. Right now, we have about a 5,200 square foot, 55 square foot station. We're looking to go approximately between 10 and 12,000 square feet. And that's what's needed. We have been fortunate to have our brothers and sisters at Rock City Falls Fire help us out by storing an ambulance because we can't even get all of our equipment in one building. This is what we want to eliminate. We want to have the ability to have all of our current equipment in the building, possibly an extra bay or two for future growth, and have functioning training areas so that we can invite people from the town in to do training, keep our own folks trained, have areas that reflect what our business has become, and that's it's more of a business. We are supported by everybody in town, and we appreciate that. And we just want to get back more to the town where we can. The footprint is debatable right now. We haven't contracted it with an architect. We are looking at several architectural firms that specialize in emergency services buildings. And it's not something where you're going to be able to just get a regular builder and somebody drawing it up on an Excel spreadsheet to make it work. It has to be done right. It has to be done by the right type of people. There's just an awful lot of considerations in there that have to be taken properly. It's not going to be a cheap project. It's going to cost some money, but if you're looking at a building that hopefully is going to last us the next 25, 30 years or more, I think it's well worth the investment, and it will help us provide better service to our community, and that's what our goal is. The reason we want to move up towards town center is because, fortunately, we're having a lot of building going on, and a lot of that building is senior citizens centers or senior citizen housing, and that's where you get a lot of calls. We want to be there as quickly as we can for those folks that we need to take care of. And that's basically it.
Okay, thank you, Ray. Oh, I guess I did, yep, I'll jump back. Yep, we'll have our first public comment section, if anybody would like to speak. Go ahead, sir.
Michael Landis.
Oh, there's a switch on top, it should be.
Can you hear me?
Well, it's working this morning.
Testing.
Nope. Yeah, this is,
No, it was 3 minutes.
no, this should be on. It was on this afternoon when we tried it. This one doesn't feel like it has any battery. Nothing cool here. You can put that one down the end of the table. You can keep it there. Doesn't happen to anybody else. Right here, sir. Oh, you go.
Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
My name is Michael Landis. I'm at 272 Meadowlark Drive. Tonight I come before you, frankly, disheartened, confused, very troubled, unlike usually how I come. I've received in the recent past many letters from Mr. Dawson threatening a variety of actions towards me, and my neighbors have also received such letters. But yesterday I received a letter from the building inspector, an official letter from the building inspector I have over there, saying that Mr. Dawson had filed a variety of official complaints against me, and that I was in violation of several codes and whatnot. My wife and I were disturbed and very upset and confused by this. Mr. Dawson claims that a fence on his property I'm in violation because a fence on his property is dilapidated. That doesn't make any sense to me. It's on his property. I don't know why I'm singled out. I share a fence with almost a dozen other homes. It's dilapidated all along the way. No one else I talked to everyone on my block. No one else received a letter. No one else received a building inspector report but me. So I asked, why am I being singled out by the building inspector? Why is the building inspector working with Mr. Dawson on this? I guess it is because I have dared to speak out against Planet and on behalf of my neighbors. Included with the letter were several pictures of my home and my backyard taken up close. I feel violated by this. These pictures are especially upsetting to my wife, as you can imagine. But I wanted to look into this, and so I spoke to a real estate agent. I reread my deed 100 times. There's nothing in there about a fence. There's nothing in there in the real estate dealings about a fence. So I come to you for help, for explanation. You know, if I'm wrong on something, if I don't understand fencing code or whatever, please explain it to me. But in the meantime, I feel very violated. I feel invaded. I feel vulnerable. You know, this is my home, and I have the right to speak out against something that's happening very close to me. And I ask for your help to help me understand what's going on. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Sure.
Good evening, Tom Pagosia, Middle Line Road. I first was disappointed to see that the ongoing rate proceeding is not on the agenda, either to set a new date or to even discuss it. We requested a postponement of the hearing scheduled for March 4th due to the response we received from our FOIL inquiry that the responsive documents would not be ready till on or about March 4th, which would leave no time to prepare and review the documents and prepare for the rate hearing. So we stand before you, and we're now requesting that the board immediately set a date for a public rate hearing in the furtherance of the ongoing rate proceeding. And we had a discussion before. Thursdays, 7 p.m. seemed to work best as previously discussed, so I would look to do that again. Furthermore, we're asking that the board establish procedures and processes for the hearing to preserve the record, to compel witnesses, to bring expert testimony, so that we are able to prepare properly for the hearing. We see no reason why the board would not want to achieve the best possible record in this ongoing rate proceeding. And I don't think I need to remind you, but the burden of proof rests with the utility. That would be Heritage Springs Sewer Works, Inc. No existing rate is presumed to be fair, reasonable, or adequate, and I know our attorney has communicated rate proceeding processes and procedures to this board, and every rate proceeding needs to start with a zero base. Tonight, I'm going to have my brother pass out to the board, and I'm going to ask Brenda to deliver the comptroller's, I'm sorry?
1 minute.
1 minute, okay. Nobody else gets reminded, just me. That's all right.
No, I did remind Mr. Landis.
Thank you. And I asked Brenda, Bruce will give you a copy for the comptroller. We're providing the board with a sworn affidavit and exhibits of the CPA who performed an audit and analysis of Heritage Springs Sewer Works, Inc., the corporation, and the conclusions reached by the accountant are consistent with Heritage Springs Sewer Works, Inc., the corporation's tax returns. And the tax returns, as we all know, are sworn statements under penalty if false statements are made. So we would ask that you would immediately take up this, that you have continued to kick down the road since last April. That's when we established it, and then got it to July, and here we are, about 30-some days out from a year, and it's supposed to happen once every 5 years. And the last one was 2012, 9 years ago. Thank you.
Thank you.
Not going to take 3 minutes to hear these out. Be pretty slow.
Thank you.
Where are we going to use for sign?
I'll take one, I will certainly read it. I will,
I'll email you with this. Okay.
that was,
Okay, Ms. Whipple.
Yes, I just wanted to back up what Mr. Landis was saying. I did receive a letter, I think, I don't know, a zoning board letter or whatever, saying I was in violation because of the deterioration of my fencing, and that I didn't have enough of a barrier back there, with the trees and the foliage. But there's just a couple of things I just want you to bear in mind. My husband had not been in good health for several years. Also, I had limited time and resources to deal with those types of issues. But it would have been nice if he had extended a hand to me and maybe offered to assist with that, but he didn't. I did receive that letter that I was in violation. I spoke to somebody today about the issue. The person that was on the letter, the zoning board or something, I don't know, I have the letter in the other room. And they did recommend a place to me that might help. They're going to send an email tomorrow. But I just felt a little put off by that, to put that mildly. I've had difficult circumstances over the last few years. I've gotten limited support from many people to deal with even the most basic issues during my husband's, illness and subsequent death. And it just, it really bothers me that this is, that they've been over there that long and, they haven't really, been a part of the community, really. They've been there for themselves. And I just want Mr. Landis to know that I did receive a similar letter, but, I'm not bothered by it, and I will take care of the issues in the best way I can. And the trees did come down in a lot of the wind storms and the snow storms. And some of the trees were removed by my husband because he felt they were a danger to the property. And in a way, I'm kind of glad that he took some of those trees down because the last windstorm we had about over a week ago, even more of the trees came down, in that back part of the yard. So I'm not in control of the weather or, acts of nature. Things happen and it's just the way it is. It isn't perfect. I haven't really kept up that part of the yard that hasn't been a priority. And thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Mr. Kane.
Yeah, good evening, members of the board. My name is Mike Kane, and I live on Meadowlark Drive in Milton, Oaks. Recently, I decided to file a noise complaint. On March 1st, at around 2:30 in the afternoon, there was a very loud bang that sounded like an explosion. This in itself is not new, but following that were several more crashes. When I got up to see what was happening, I could see a very large piece of equipment at the Planet Waste facility lifting and dropping what looked like a large steel container repeatedly. The usual loud noises are one thing. This was a new level of loud. After locating the phone number on the Town of Milton webpage to file a complaint, I was informed where to find a link that required me to print out a form that I needed to fill out, scan the PDF format, attach to an email, and send it into the building department. To this day, I have no idea if that email was received. I've had no feedback concerning my complaint. I would like to think a simple online form would be available and some kind of response would have been expected. At this time, I'd like to say thank you for listening, and I will have much more to say in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. Seeing none, no more, I will call them. My apologies.
Thank you. So just would like to follow up on Tom's comments regarding the nature of the proceedings for the Heritage Springs rate review, and in support of the fact that those proceedings are to be public and there is to be public comment, because that is precisely what you said you would do. On July 22nd, Mr. Supervisor, you said I'm going to close the public hearing, but I'd like to see a report by the 12th, and then we can reschedule or schedule another public hearing on the 26th. So your intent was to have another public hearing. Mr. Craig, at the same time, said before you set a formal date for another public hearing, let's let our controller and our engineer analyze the information that's to come in, including additional information that Heritage is going to provide by that deadline. So clearly the intent was to have another public hearing, because that's exactly what you said you would do. And Mr. Craig goes on to say, and then we can talk about scheduling a date once we have that for the public to come back in, obviously return because you closed the public hearing, and comment. The public needs to comment at a public hearing. So obviously the intent was to have a public hearing. So I would urge the board to set a date. Let's get this thing done. I don't understand the reluctance to solving problems that face the town. It's very easy to do. You set a date, you have a public hearing, you make a decision, and get it done. Mr. Landis, if you think you're frustrated, you got another thing coming. You got to give it about 20 more years. So I'd like to see this get wrapped up. Good, please. Thank you.
Okay, moving on. Joe? Barb, can you mute your computer?
There's a lot of feedback. There's echoing. The microphone.
I wasn't getting any feedback.
Somebody was.
I have it mute, I have it.
Everybody on Zoom is.
The volume's low.
Good evening, Joe Bianchi with MJ Engineering. I'm here with Jenny Lippman, who is the project manager who's been on this project since the summer. So we thought it was a good idea to give you an update as where we are, and also clear up some, I guess, ambiguities about what the project currently includes. So I think it's good to understand how we ended up where we are and where we are today. So the project was originally put out to bid December of last year, 2020, with bids due January 7th, 2020. I think it was the week before Christmas, maybe just around December 21st, we were in a walkthrough with the contractor, walked into the building and found that there was a pretty large plumbing leak. The building was flooded. We immediately notified the town. The town called in quick response and mitigated that flood. Shortly thereafter that, we notified the board and through an email, which was shared with the entire board about, we sent it on December 30th, saying, hey, these are the circumstances where it happened. The board, we need to deal with this. Bids were due the following week. We recommended that the scope of what the rehabilitation was no longer the same. The internal flood had caused substantial damage. We suggested or recommended to push the bid date off from January 7th to February 2nd. And in that time, we would have to assess what the project would become. So what we did is on January 7th or 8th, we had a conference call, myself, Jenny, Councilman Froelich, Supervisor Klonick, about what are our path forward. And we had recommended that we basically move the bid date to February 2nd, preserve the roof project, preserve the exterior drainage, but remove the internal renovation. The mold remediation was staying in. But remove the internal renovation, which principally was carpeting. because it made no sense to deal with carpeting if the internal renovation scope was going to grow based on other factors, i.e. damage from flooding, possibly more mold. So the board made that decision to do that, and then we moved the bid date, and we issued a couple addendums. We obviously issued an addendum to change the bid date. Then we issued another addendum to clarify what the reduced scope was, removing the internal renovation, which was principally the carpeting. And there was a subsequent addendum just clarifying some contractor comments, nothing substantive. Bids were received, bids came in within our budget. Low bidder was Mid-State Construction, $460,000. We've gone through their contract. The board was presented tonight a contract to execute. We went through a walkthrough. We are going through submittals. So once the weather's permitted, they're ready to go. One thing that the town did request was, I believe there's been a request to get the court out of its current place to see if the contractor was amenable to maybe accelerating a portion of the work over the court so that the court can move back in. They've made indications that they can do that, but we've made it clear to the board that they are controlled by weather. If March is bad weather or April's bad weather, that really hampers them. But they've made every indication that they will try to accommodate that. On that project, the dates are July 7th for substantial completion, August 7th, final done, walk around. So that's where we are on that project. So I think, again, the question about what's in and what's out, I hope I've made it clear what's in and what's out. Any questions of the board about what the contract for the town is about to execute includes as far as the building work at the town?
I have a question about the mold remediation. We have a report from, well, when we moved out, the building department was one of the hot spots. And Bill was very concerned about his people working down there, obviously in the basement, but the flooding coming through the wall or whatever from the drainage issues. In March, later in March, we had an evaluation done.
By your own, by
Yes.
some of the town
Yeah.
hired independent?
Yes, no, the town hired someone to do an evaluation.
Yeah.
And that came back with mold in both the building department and the courts. So now those areas are left out of this contract, and that, I guess I want to know why. I don't see any sense in doing part of the building and not doing the complete thing and having problems pop up next year.
Yeah. So we had that report. I believe that sampling was done a little bit differently. They did air sampling, I believe. They did air sampling. So just because the air has an indicator of mold does not mean the adjacent walls did. It could be recirculated from your HVAC system. So that study that we had no involvement in, but we did personally looked at, it gave no indicator of the source. It just said it was present. We, in July, as part of our study of the building about options, we actually went in and did tape samples. We found possible candidates, took physical samples of locations and earmarked where it was. In that study, we found it was predominantly in the plenum area of the roof. That's where it was. So I'll just speculate. It could have been getting in the HVAC system, and the HVAC system was circulating around the building. I'm just speculating, I don't know.
So, I mean, if that's the case, then something's got to be looked at there, because when Bill's department moves back in, they're going to have the same issue.
Right, well, we're getting there. So to explain on the asbestos, we had one report done in July, said it was predominantly in the plenum area of the roof.
Not asbestos, mold.
Sorry. Just mold, sorry.
Don't open up another
No,
can of worms.
sorry. It was mold, mold usually finds on places where it can grow. So it was on wood, insulation, stuff of that nature. The board was concerned when we did the page turn in October, and they said, hey, we want to make sure that we've got all the mold. So our testing firm, Adelaide, went back out there. I think Supervisor Zlotnick was there. I think you even maybe swung a hammer through a wall. And
No, but I watched.
you watched, okay. So we did find one other area on the lower level that had it, but we went through again reasonably thoroughly. We didn't actively tear down walls. We didn't want to do more damage than was necessary. We didn't do a destructive testing. Another area included that in the bid. That was in the original bid that went out December 7th. So I think we've quantified reasonably where the mold is, but, and the board knows this, is we have carried a rather larger than normal fuel odor allowance because of things that we may not know, unforeseen conditions. For this project, it would normally be around 5% of the construction value. This one is probably around $40,000. So it's pretty substantial, in case we run into things that we did not actively look at. So I think we, as your consultant, have done the best of what we can do. We did a different approach on mold. We also looked for ACM, looked for universal waste, not just mold. So we did something I think is a little bit more accurate and quantifiable as far as finding the source of mold, not just saying it's present, but seeing where it is. Any more questions on that?
Not so much a question, Joel, as a statement. When we looked at the court, there could have been mold, but it wasn't significant in the court. And we theorized that all the insulation's coming out of the ceiling anyways. Above it's a metal deck, metal won't grow mold.
Right.
So that's probably,
That's kind of part of the remediation.
That-
But you're gonna remove all that.
yeah, so that's gonna be all removed anyway.
Right,
So
and understand.
we probably handled the majority of the mold that we would find in the court.
That we would find
In the
prior to December 21st.
Yes.
And mold's a little bit different. It's not regulated, like ACM, PCBs, and lead. There are, theoretical targets, people with respiratory illness, it exacerbates those, so, and it can be handled differently when you encounter it. So we dealt with that, and the documents expressly show what you can and cannot do.
Okay, so now we're at the point, we have our contract for the mold remediation and the roof.
We have one contractor, the mold guys underneath the roof contractor.
Right, we have the one contract. Can we get moving on the other contracts?
Which, all right, so,
I think I'm very frustrated because, we give people dates or we talk about dates and we just can't seem to get there. And I don't have a timetable. I don't have to, I don't care to give me October, but, okay, let's line up these contracts. There's no reason why, is there any reason why these contracts can't be out now?
absolutely there's reasons why they're not out right now. So it's a good segue into the next topic. So we got on a call, some of us on Monday, and there was one thing that we recommended in January that the board we thought should entertain, is based on what we saw from what quick response had pulled out of the walls, we started to see the plumbing, started to see some of the ductwork for the HVAC, and we said, based on visual observations, this stuff needs to be looked at. We said, we think you bring in a subject matter expert to look at it, and also because the level of flooding that maybe portions of the electrical system have not been compromised. We gave a proposal to the board. Early January, the work was authorized last month, February 10th, I believe. We said 4 weeks to get it done. We just handed it, we received it Friday from our consultant. We wanted to sit through it. We briefly talked about it on Monday, but we presented to you today, and it gave you two categories. The smaller budget basically is what they think is a life safety critical code issues. I believe the budget for that is around $30,000.
I haven't had a chance to read it.
Yeah.
So $30,000, and we talked internally, and I think it's worth more discussion. Most of that you could literally go to contract and say, here it is. It's basically visual. Change that light, fix that door. I'm sort of just ad-libbing, but it's really, it doesn't need a design. It's remove and replace. So we talked about, could you go through your own procurement cycle to do that? Not knowing what your thresholds are, I think that is a possibility. And I also think if you're building in grounds, crew have certain skill sets, it could be all, portions, some. So I think theoretically from our report, a simple walkthrough with a couple contractors, you could get that underway in short order. As far as that, maybe our involvement is maybe doing a walkthrough with the contractor, but then after that, the town could really handle and administer that. That would be outside the roofing contract that makes sense. The second category was a much larger number. And really a lot of that was saying, you've got mechanical systems, fire alarm systems, HVAC systems that are truly beyond their useful life. That building is, it's showing its age, and that's all facets of it. The roof will be a 30, 35-year life on it once it's done. But everything else is, whatever lifetime it was supposed to on, we're +1, +5 of those years. So all those systems, those are shoulds, not need to, but shoulds. So the thought process is if you're going to invest in this asset, is this the time that you can afford it? I think that number was
I'm sorry, $385,000.
$385,000, and that includes multiple large building systems. So, yeah, I mean, we tried to sort of estimate soft cost for that, for the design of it, because that would require developing of a contract document, multiple contracts, because now we're over the Wick's Law threshold of $500,000, and that'll take time. We're thinking theoretically, did we talk about what we thought the time frame? It'll probably take about 2 or 3 months, 2 to 3 months to get bid documents on the street. So that pushes out when it's available. But we also talked internally that you could potentially do those $30,000 plus the roof, possibly get in the August timeframe, but then do the big items sequentially over the next couple of years. Understand though, you may be redoing some finish work that you're doing now. So it's going to cost more, but it adds to the life of that building. I mean, I know I've thrown a lot at you, but because we're trying to give you as much information, I don't think you're prepared to make a decision tonight. But it answers one of your questions. I think the earliest you possibly could get into it is possibly,
Like I said, some type of time frame.
possibly within that, you know, fixing the damage that has occurred from quick responses remediation. Some of that design work still requires new bid documents, but that probably could happen within that window. You're doing the $30,000 worth of code issues on mechanical, electrical, and plumbing. So I think if all stars align, it may be August, it may be a plus another month. If you choose to do all the large upgrades, the 400 plus, you're probably not back in that building in this calendar year. If you do it all at once right now.
This has kind of been my issue since day one, that since there's no plan on the table as to what we're going to do or what we're going to do with that building, how much do we want to invest in that building if in 3 years we decide it's going.
I mean, we developed, we did a study that laid that out for the town. And the board, the stewards of the building made the decision that this is the way you're going. So that was, but obviously the plumbing failure really offset that. So you have to redirect and refocus and reschedule and recalibrate.
I think we're going to need some time to digest what you gave to us.
Absolutely, understand. You're under,
This afternoon.
but you've got a lot of forces external wanting to vacate you from here, and we understand it. So,
But have we made any decision on what we're doing with the cosmetics, the carpeting and ceiling tiles and
That'll be the
finishing
next
work?
contract. That's the next contract.
So can we get that contract rolling?
That's what we're working on now.
well, again, to do that, again, I'll emphasize,
Okay.
if you do that as is, meaning we're just putting back what was torn out from the flood, that means you are not including any of the large ticket mechanical, electrical, plumbing work.
Well, it's not just, you keep saying just the flood, it's not just the flood. I mean, the boardroom in the supervisor's office has been leaking for 3-4 years. So, I mean, that's part of that cosmetic work also.
Yes.
And replacing whatever has to be replaced in the men's locker room. I mean, that was an ongoing problem.
And understand the internal renovation work has grown significantly from what was pulled out of the original bid. It's not just the same work going back in, it's the same work plus a lot more. It's more sheetrock, more damaged carpet. The tile has delaminated, that was ACM.
No, the
Not
match,
that piece, not the master, okay.
match, not the tile.
Yeah. So the renovation work, just putting it back new, has grown significantly from what was pulled out in December. Because remember, the renovation work before the flood was simply taking out the carpet and putting new carpet. It was very minimal on the internal.
Carpeting and ceiling tiles.
Yeah. So now it's more room, more buildings, more space, more carpeting, more stuff.
Well, the other thing too, once we voted to do what we're doing now, I made the statement at a board meeting, that meant we were keeping that building.
Right, we
Because you're not
said,
gonna invest $1 million into a building and then tear it down. what you were saying, yes.
So you've effectively pot committed long-term to that building.
Correct.
It does not dismiss the idea of expanding that building. We said that,
Right.
we've actually developed an
Talked about that
idea
too.
that
Look at that,
if
yes.
you did choose to stay there, there are abilities to expand it and bring it up to code.
Right.
The last thing I want to say is the unknown, and we still, again, because the extent of the larger mechanical electrical upgrade is still raw. Literally, we're still deciphering. The cost, we think, is relatively accurate, all things considered. The bidding environment is all over the place. A 2x4 last year was $2.20. A 2x4 today is $6. And that's affecting all raw materials. So that being said, is all along we've told you that we are up against what's called a level 2 renovation. I think John knows what I'm talking about. That once you start doing more renovations in an existing space, you start to hit code issues, meaning we might be up against that, meaning we're doing so much mechanical, electrical renovations on that big ticket, it may trigger other code upgrades that you don't have, i.e. an elevator, or more full ADA access. Those are the big ticket items that we need to get a better understanding of. The magnitude of those improvements relative to the overall size of that building. So that's the only unknown in that. So that number may grow based on invoking the building code, the level 2 renovation aspect. And I think we've said that all along, that that's always going to be something that we have to be very careful of when we look at larger scope items.
One other question that I don't know much about, but I'll ask the question anyway. Drainage, which has been an ongoing problem as long as I've been on board. Do we have that fully covered? Are we going the right direction with that? For the drainage on the Geyser roadside? And do we have other options that you think might be better?
We provided, the bid documents as they showed what we showed in the program report over the summer. We do know that there was discussion about changing it by putting in an underground system out in the parking lot. We talked about it, saying yes, we could do that, but we need more field investigations. The decision was made not to pursue that because that cost more money. What we're showing is what we originally proposed. However, I understand there is some desire not to do that anymore.
No, the board didn't, I don't ever remember making that decision, but
MJ was directed not to go that way.
was that,
It may have not made it out of the
did
group.
MJ think that was a better way to go? I know there's issues with the holding areas over at Cumberland Farm, and that's where all this drainage is going. I know they just approved the Napa and put their own holding pond in, because the one that we're using and I think Cumberland's using, is not going to take anymore. So, you know, there's.
Yeah.
So the drainage system as proposed and as in the contract that is about to be executed for Mid-State Industries does include a new membrane system for the foundation wall and footing drain, which then goes to a series of dry wells, which are intended to infiltrate that water into the ground. It does then overflow into the municipal system that then does go downstream, but the intent is that as much as possible is infiltrated on site before it heads downstream to help mitigate that concern.
Putting in dry wells.
Yeah, so there's, I believe, 4 of them.
Yeah, I know it was at least 3, I don't remember if it was.
Yeah, it was 3 or 4, I don't
Thought it
remember
was
off the
3.
top of my head, but there's several dry wells that are large, I believe they're 6 or 8 foot diameter, that are meant to hold that water and slowly infiltrate it to the ground. Yeah.
So the other approach that was discussed, would it be better? Likely yes, because it did not include an overflow, but it would have been a lot more costly. So with better comes more money, usually.
I have one question for you, Joel. Can we, it's called a change order, is that the right term?
We don't want to say that over the entire term of this contract.
No. Too late now, but what would we, is it possible to add the mold that may be in the base, I want to say the basement.
Basically, the other mold that has grown since we can, I think what it does not hurt to at least talk to Mid-State and say, give us an estimate for the additional mold remediation. And if it's, you know, I think that, like you said, the field order allowance is larger than we would normally budget. It would not hurt to say, all right, they're there. There's a cost savings for them to do that. Say, oh, by the way, just move to this other area, get a price from them, and then we can present it to the board and say, let's do it. We
Okay,
could actually do it, we possibly wouldn't even do it as a change order, we would just start using that fuel oil bonds.
Okay. They are coming on Monday to start.
In the court.
In the court, and they're gonna start in the court and then work their way, you know, if the court's done, they're gonna keep moving.
Yep.
Their time frame was, if I remember correctly,
2 weeks.
2 weeks
For
to get all the mold remediated.
Yep.
So I think.
We can talk to them tomorrow, I mean, they've been
That'd be
there,
great.
it's, you can see it where it is, it's not really hidden anymore.
No, it's not hidden anymore, so it shouldn't be a big surprise to folks. All right, thank you. Anybody else?
Yeah, I got a couple of things. Just as a clarification, the Napa, the reason they have to put in their own holding areas is that's because what's required by stormwater management.
Yeah.
You have to keep the water on you.
Oh, there is an issue.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah.
it's too. The other thing, Joel, did they pull the building permit for this yet?
No, we're actually working with them to do it.
Okay.
Bill Lewis is contacting us, so we're getting that together.
And the thing I'd like to see the board do is waive the fee on it, because there's no sense in us paying.
Right, we're not
Us for
gonna
the
pay
same.
ourselves for building
Because Bill,
permit, right?
Bill just hit you with a change order for the building.
Well, permits
We'll
are
pay for
usually
it.
above and beyond anyways.
Yes.
Any,
Sure, Jim.
Joel, on the drainage, we discussed that we were going to go to the parking lot and do that, I mean, and you guys said you decided to go to the stormwater. Who decided that?
Well, we showed what we showed based on the program study we did over the summer. We heard the change what was proposed.
Yeah, we spoke with Jen
Right,
all about
and
it.
we said, we'll do this, it requires soil testing, more survey. We talked to the building committee, the price was, they didn't want to spend more money, so we didn't go any further with it, so we kept what we got.
Okay, well, part of that is going into the municipal drainage, the superintendent of the highway has to approve that. Nobody even spoke about it. Never even discussed anything with them. I'm looking at, we've got at least 5 structures, concrete work in this, plus we're going an extra 150 feet with drainage. Did we price out both ways? And on top of it, part of that discussion too, we have parking lot issues. Barb's kind of right on what she's saying about let's address it all. Parking lot floods, there's no drainage there. You could literally go 20 feet off the corner of the building, drop some leaching basins in there, and actually also then fix the parking lot, so you're fixing 2 problems. But the infiltration basin across it will not hold more water. We have a project coming right now, so I'm not quite sure we're just magically going to send more water without discussing it with us. It's a little troubling. And then also just curious about all this 385 for all the mechanicals. Was any of that damaged by the water? Could we turn that into insurance and recoup that?
I have no idea what the cause of the damage was. We just looked at, there are issues and they need to be, I think from the report, most of the issues were aging out. It wasn't like apparent damage from the flood, but it could have been.
Yeah.
They didn't classify what was the source of the aging or the condition of the equipment. They just said it was,
Some of the things listed on here, Jason, have nothing to do really.
yeah, there's stuff that has really, some of it has nothing to do with the flood. Some of it is, your piece of equipment is 35 years old and it was only supposed to last 20 years. There's a lot of that. It's more than just beyond flood issues.
Yeah, I just didn't know. I don't think the insurance company hasn't seen it since it was renovated to actually do, at least I don't think they had. I know they came in initially, but I just, hey, maybe they felt.
If the board has the report, they're free to share with the insurance agency to see what can be possibly covered. Sure.
And I can say, I think this has been quite a learning experience for this board. When I initially spoke of how we were looking at this, I got an immense amount of pushback on spending money. When we talked millions back then, people went out of their minds on the board. And unfortunately, I think it had to be that learning experience.
Yeah, and I think over the course, you even talked to Supervisor Barrett at Milton Park. That's one of our work for the town, and they said they were just doing the roof. I pass every day, and that cost $1 million. And their building is about the same size as yours. So, similar roof to
Anything else from anyone? Okay, thanks, Joel. Thanks, Jenny.
Thank
We'll
you.
be in touch. Jason and Anthony have been working to find places to put chairs and desks, so we don't, at this point in time, I don't think we're going to need to rent storage containers. I'm going to take that one off the agenda. Next up is a motion to allow the town clerk and the deputy town clerk to attend the New York State Town Clerks Association virtual conference.
There's a resolution. You don't have the new, I put the new agenda on your desk.
All right, I had that on the end of mine, so. Well, let's finish the one we got here first, then we'll go back. The motion to allow town clerk and deputy town clerk to attend the New York State Town Clerk Association virtual conference on April 24th, 26th through the 28th, with a cost not to exceed $125 per person.
I'll make that motion.
Give a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Frank. Any discussion? Seeing none, Brendan, can you pull the board, please?
Councilman Blaisdell.
Yes.
Councilwoman Kerr.
Yes.
Councilman Froelich.
Yes?
Councilman Isakson.
Yes.
Supervisor Zavadi.
Yes. Depending on which agenda I'm going with, Resolution 23, rescinding Resolution 21. Whereas the town of Milton provides health insurance benefits to certain full-time employees and elected and appointed officials, and whereas under the MVP Gold Premium Plan, Town Justice John Comey's employee spouse coverage for which he is entitled would cost the town for the period February 1st, 2021 to January 31st, 2022, approximately $16,268. And whereas Justice Comey and his spouse are currently afforded similar medical insurance benefits through Medicare and supplemental insurance at a cost of approximately $7,000, and whereas the town board did by resolution 22 of the year 2021 did resolve to reimburse Justice Comey for insurance costs he incurred for Medicare and supplemental coverage in an attempt to save the town and the taxpayers approximately $9,600 annually. However, the town has since been advised by the health insurance broker that federal Medicare regulations currently prevent and disallow a scenario where the employee is eligible for Medicare and supplemental coverage and the employer opts to pay for or reimburse the employee for such coverage rather than place them on the employer group insurance plan, thus requiring the town to offer and provide only the same health insurance benefits offered and afforded to all active employees, forcing the town to pay the higher premium amount through the town's own insurance provider in lieu of paying for or reimbursing the lower and supplemental insurance coverage. Now therefore be it resolved by the town board, does here rescind its entirety, resolution number 22 of the year 2021 dated February 10th, declaring it to be null and void and of no further effect to the same degree and extent as if it had never been passed. Can I get a motion?
I'll make that motion.
Second?
I'll second.
Thank you. Any discussion?
Yes.
Seeing none, can you pull the board, please, Brenda?
Councilman Blaisdell.
Yes.
Councilwoman Kerr.
Yes.
Councilman Froelich.
Yes?
Councilman Isakson.
Yes.
Supervisor Zavadi.
Yes, thank you. Motion to extend the state of emergency for another 30 days. As we stated before the meeting was started, I don't know if it was before the meeting started, right, John? The whole purpose of this is to keep us in line if and when the federal government decides funds will be reimbursed. So although the numbers are down to a low 2% and more and more people are getting vaccinated, there still may be some costs associated with the pandemic that's been happening. So in order to keep us at least eligible for funding from the government, I would like to extend this for another 30 days. So can I get a motion to do that, please?
I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
Thank you, Frank. Any discussion? Seeing none, Brenda, can you pull the board, please?
Councilman Blaisdell.
Yes.
Councilwoman Kerr.
Yes.
Councilman Froelich.
Yes?
Councilman Isakson.
Yes.
Supervisor Zavadi.
Yes, thank you. Next up is a motion to advertise in our papers and on Indeed for a part-time assistant in the assessor's office, and at the same time for the position of camp director. At this time, we do not know if we'll be allowed to run the summer camp as we have in the past, but I would rather have it lined up and be ready to go if the state says we can, rather than be caught at the end of June and have everyone go, oh, we can have a camp now and not be ready to go. So I'd like the motion to please advertise for both of those positions.
I'll make that motion.
Thank you, John. Can I get a second?
Is this
Thank you, Frank.
Jenny, is this a assessor's law assistant, or is it a data collector? Originally, I thought
It's a data collector, but there's really no part-time data collecting position. So you have to basically say it's an assistant clerk or whatever to the building, or to the
wasn't it
assessor's
classified
office.
before as a data collector?
I don't think so.
No, I don't believe it was.
Yeah, 'cause
No, I don't, I mean several years ago.
Yes, yeah, there's no longer a data collecting position by the county.
Okay.
Do we know what the fees are for Indeed each time you submit one of these?
I don't off the top of my head, Ryan, but I know it's a lot cheaper than the newspapers, and we get much better responses from it. But I think traditionally, we still have people who read the paper, and that's why we're going to do it. But I know the last time we asked for an ad for Bill's department, we had 3 responses from the newspaper ad, and then when Tina and Terry put it on Indeed, we received over 17. So people are responding more to online job postings than they are newspapers. I think more people are using computers than reading newspapers. It may be something we address, in the future. Brenda, can you pull the board, please?
Sure. Councilman Blaisdell.
Yes.
Councilwoman Kerr.
Yes.
Councilman Crowlish.
Yes?
Councilman Isakson.
Yes.
Supervisor Zalapik.
Yes. Thank you. Next up is a motion to begin the process of rezoning Route 50 in advance of the final report from MJ Engineering. The Route 50 Corridor Transition Committee has had a discussion with Jackie from MJ and Andrus and their team. Based on the survey that we took here a few months back, 49% of the respondents indicated that mixed use would be an acceptable use for the Route 50 corridor. And a mixed use, right now the corridor is zoned, I believe, strictly commercial or transition, and that would require a change to go to mixed use. So when we have to put together the language to change that and then describe what mixed use is. So I'm going to I would like to anyway, with the board's permission, talk to Jackie about getting the right language written up for a change in zoning and run it by Attorney Craig here to make sure that we're wording it properly, and we can start the process of rezoning that stretch of land to show potential investors or developers that we're serious about moving forward on that stretch of land there. It will probably be about a 3 to 4 month process. It may even require an amendment to our master plan. We have to look into the legal wording of that. But I would like to be able to get that started. So, Jim, what's our next step?
I think your next step is exactly what you said, is to get whoever it is at MJ, Jackie, to provide whatever language you're considering, and then we have to put it in code and go through the process of amending our zoning code.
Thank you. So, I don't know, do I need a motion to do that, or can I just talk to Jackie, and get it started, Jim?
I'd get a motion to see if everybody's on board with doing it.
Okay. So, can I get a motion to start the process of rezoning that Route 50 corridor?
I'll make that motion.
Can I get a second? Guys, thank you, Frank. Any discussion?
Are we still within budget on this?
Yes.
Thank you.
just out of curiosity, and forgive me because I haven't been on the planning board for a while, does rezoning it from commercial to mixed use take out any permittable things that were there right now? I mean, originally we had looked at, like, Price Chopper was interested in moving to that section of Route 50. Would that stop them from doing that, or?
No, I don't believe it would. That was in our discussions with MJ. I don't believe it would preclude anyone from doing that. We can always, if we're going to change the zoning of the area, John, we also have the ability to put in what we would like to see go in and leave out what we don't want to. And then there'll be a public hearing, you know, at least one public hearing on the change in zoning anyway, so the public would have input as to what is or isn't going to be included in that area. Brenda, can you pull the board, please?
Sure. Councilman Blaisdell.
Yes.
Councilwoman Kerr.
Yes.
Councilman Froelich.
Yes.
Councilman Isaacson.
Yes.
Supervisor Zawada.
Yes, thank you. Next up is a motion to approve Amanda Zawada to attend the online classes for public notary training at a cost of no more than $129.
I'll make that motion.
Thank you, Frank. Can I get a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Ryan. Any discussion? Hearing none. Brenda, can you pull the board, please?
Councilman Blaisdell.
Yes.
Councilwoman Kerr.
Yes.
Councilman Froelich.
Yes.
Councilman Isaacson.
Yes.
Supervisor Zawada.
Yes, thank you. Next up will be a brief discussion on the gas island and the cold storage building. I think you all have a package of what we have to go on. We did put away a rather large sum of money to get these projects started or to do them. And I think I would like you guys to take some time and read over these packages and come back to us in 2 weeks and you can give us your thoughts if we'd like to continue. You know, obviously we need to move on. The gas island needs to be replaced. It's one of those things that's getting older by the minute, and we're kind of flirting with disaster there. Not that anything's ready to happen, but when you have something that's 30 years old, you know, that I would like to see the gas islands moved first.
Do we have a cost on that one?
Yes.
Yes, it's in your,
I saw the storage.
I actually believe, Penny, that I believe it was $690 that was put aside for that. Covered both those projects.
yeah, it did, it did. I don't know if it will now, but I mean, you know, it did at the time.
And there's also a $100,000 grant
Yep.
Yes.
that goes with that project.
Right, so that's $760, and we can apply for a grant this year too, so, it's potentially covered. Anything under new business? Okay. Okay, we'll now open the floor for the closing public comment. Anybody has anything? Mr. Munter?
I didn't bring a pen with me, so I hope I can go through the topics I want to discuss before the egg timer goes off. But I guess one of the first things I wanted to bring up, going back a couple steps where you're beginning to process the zoning Route 50, I think our town's at a time when you should be possibly analyzing the total rezoning, not doing this in individual steps. One of the things, many years ago, I came to many meetings where the cell towers were a big issue. They all dissolved, What's taking their place now is solar farms. And as you drive across New York State, these things are popping up everywhere. Many places not very attractive. And I think even in the town situation, I question, I think there's a lot of questions as to where solar farms are going to be 20 years from now. I think this might be a fad that's being proposed that's going to become an albatross. And when I see the towns saying, well, we'll take a $100,000 bond to demolish this system, I don't think that's enough money, because to get rid of a 70-inch TV set today, legally, costs $75 to $100, okay? When I take a 30-acre solar farm and having to get rid of that, and then using the time value of money of what $100,000 today is going to be in 20 years, I think we're putting the town in a very precarious situation. Okay? I got 1 minute?
Yes, sir.
Okay, let me cover the rest of them. Public comment-wise, the one years ago when I came to town meetings and I had a public comment, I could get an answer from it. I could poll the board or get an answer from anybody as to what they thought of my comments. When I make a comment today, it turns out I make it, I get no response, and it seems to evaporate into the atmosphere. So I never hear back on it. I think it would be good to let the board individually comment on these proposals, okay? As far as, I see MJ is signed up again for this rezoning thing. We use them a lot. I'm not being critical of them, but I do think that there are other organizations that might be better equipped. I am critical of MJ right now. I think we should have had a town board spec and bid that went out that would cover the entire project to get this thing back in, rather than piecemeal it into $400,000 and whatever's coming on, because this is how the town gets into trouble if they don't know the entire process up front. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Anyone else? Okay, there's a few people online, so I'm going to try this again. Ms. Stanko, you're up.
Hi, thank you Supervisor. It's Stanko, 32 West Street, Boston. I may have missed it because there were a lot of figures thrown out when Joe was speaking. Do we have a breakdown of how much extra that flood per se cost the town? And the second part is, was that covered by insurance? I don't know if you can answer that, or do I have to come up and foil those records, or?
No, you don't have to foil. I'll answer your questions when you're done.
That's all.
Okay.
That was just my question. What was the total cost of the extra part of the flood, and what did the insurance cover up?
Okay. I can answer those questions. The first part of the question is no, we don't have a number from Joel what the added costs are. The second part of the question is the insurance company did not cover the costs of the damage that was caused by the leak. The original bill from Quick Response was $49,000 and change, and after several negotiating attempts with them, I was able to settle on a number of $40,000. So it cost the town $40,000. I hope that answers your question.
Plus whatever repairs are added on to what.
That's, yep, that's correct.
Okay, thank you, Ben.
Yes? Okay. Mr. Dawson?
Good evening, everyone.
Yes, sir.
Tony Dawson from Application Recycling, 274 Greenfield Ave, also Spotty Garden. I'd like to take this opportunity to briefly respond to Mr. Landis, Ms. Whipple, and Mr. Keene's earlier comments. I've only defended my position in my company. I've never threatened anyone. I simply responded to each one of their previous comments and copied all town of Milton officials. I think the record's abundantly clear. My company has been compliant with all applicable laws, despite all these false allegations and misguided facts. I personally filed complaints against the neighbors that continue to make false allegations against me and my company because they're factually incorrect and they're damaging to my reputation and my livelihood. To answer Mr. Landis' question, I would direct Mr. Landis and the others to the conditions of the subdivision of the town of Oaks and how that subdivision was approved, including but not limited to the subdivision approval, local law number 2 of 1989, and the deed restrictions that go along with the Milton Oaks development. I think that these documentations will clarify and make it abundantly clear what they as property owners are responsible for to be in compliance with these deed restrictions and laws. The building department simply responded to my complaints. I would like to take this time to applaud the town of Milton for taking action on my complaints and for not practicing or allowing selective enforcement or double standards to exist for non-compliant property owners. The laws and the deed restrictions that I am referring to and directing them to were clearly intended.
1 minute, sir.
Were intended to help mitigate noise, sound barriers, the exact issues that they're currently have been complaining about for about the last 4 months or so. Also, to Mr. Landis' comments about the law of noise, I think that he would take a look at Chapter 103 of the town law of public junkyards. What his complaints are kind of outlined in what one should expect when living next to a junkyard. Thank you all. Have a good evening.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else? See nothing else, I do have to call for an executive session to talk about the employment status of an individual who's employed by the town. So I need a motion to go into executive session.
I'll make that motion.
Can I get a second? Thank you, Frank. I'll call you in a minute. Brenda, can you pull the board, please?
Councilman Blaisdell.
Yes.
Councilwoman Kerr.
Yes.
Councilman Froelich.
Yes.
Councilman Isakson.
Yes.
Supervisor Slack.
Yes. Thank you.
I thought, yeah.